Welcome to Autodesk Construction Cloud for Architects. Our presenter today is our Building Solutions Team Manager, Vince Daniele. So Vince, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lori, as always. Welcome everyone. Quick introduction slide for me. For those of you who never sat through a session or haven't met me personally, my name is Vince Daniele. I'm based out of Detroit, Michigan, and prior to being employed at IMAGINiT, my background is primarily architecture and construction, but I have been with IMAGINiT for 11 years in some capacity, providing either now I'm a manager, but prior to being a manager, consulting services for our technical team. So pretty much the person that you would reach out to if you needed software implementation, support, you name it, but definitely more on the technical than the sales side. So for those of you who don't know about us directly, IMAGINiT Technologies, we are Autodesk's largest services provider. We've got people all over the country, and we've been, I guess, 40 years now, we've been supporting Autodesk in some way, shape, or form in supporting their applications and software being stuff. So for today's agenda, what I want to primarily focus on, and we've had a lot of conversations with our customers over the last really year, especially with COVID and more of our customers implementing the Autodesk Cloud, the cloud solution for work sharing and working in your Revit projects. I wanted to just put some information out there, provide some information about different workflows and how architects can work with consultants using BIM Collaborate Pro, and we'll go into model coordination and some other things there. But what I've done today is I've set up a presentation. It is a live presentation, as Lori mentioned. Right prior to starting the presentation here, my graphics card was dropping on me. So I think I'm running off my integrated card right now. So I apologize if it's a little bit laggy on the Revit side. I'll try to move slow, but most of this is really on the web app, which should run fine. So the three primary items I want to talk about today are how we actually, this idea of working with a live model, so live linking to the cloud versus using a publish and consume workflow when you're working with consultants. Maybe for some of you, when to use live models, when to do the publish and consume workflow. Some basic stuff about tracking design issues via Autodesk Docs. And then also this module, which is part of BIM Collaborate and obviously included in BIM Collaborate Pro. I will talk about model coordination and maybe some best practices for how to set your models up for that particular application for model coordination. So with that, I'll get right into my demonstration here. So I do want to start off with a simple, let's see, should have this project up. So for this presentation, I created a really basic Revit model that does have a structural link in it. So that's enough to show you this whole idea of live link versus consume. If you guys have joined any of our previous webinars on the Autodesk Construction Cloud or BIM 360, you probably know by now that Autodesk Docs is really the data management system that ties everything together in the cloud. So any project that you create, if you're using BIM Collaborate Pro, the file management system, the data management system that it's built on top of is Autodesk Docs. There is some setup that went into creating this project. We've got some templates with folder structures that we use for a lot of our presentations. We feel like they're best practices. So there is some implementation or there's some development to get to this point in Docs in setup, but this presentation is really more meant on focusing on the collaboration workflows and not the setup. So just as a quick kind of run through here, the way we've set this environment up, in a typical project, we've got folders for housing where our design models go. So anything that's located in here would be, some companies have different naming conventions, but for all intents and purposes, we're putting our Revit models into this design models folder, and then I've broken it out into different disciplines: architecture, MEP, and structure. I'll show you how this works, but right now I do have one Revit project set up on the architectural side that is placed in this folder. So I'll go through the whole process of how you're actually getting your files up there, but wanted to walk through this system. Now, from a outside consultant, if you're bringing in a company, I think there's one other person just in this project, or a couple of other placeholders in here. So the members in this project are just really internal. We've got a couple of non-existent people just so we can assign different issues to people for demonstration. But Scott Burke and I are really the only ones that are real people that are assigned to this project. And our access level is project admin. As an architect, chances are you're going to be controlling this docs environment and the model sharing and coordination between your consultants. So chances are that there's going to be at least someone from your team that's assigned the project admin for the docs side of things. You can invite people from your team into the project and add members to the project and limit their permissions on which folders they'll see. And that same thing goes for anyone that you're bringing in, an outside consultant that is working in the Revit model or in the Revit side of the project. We can add those members to the project. Usually you would assign them by company, but then if you needed to then specify within the company someone that has more privileges in the folders, you can get into a more granular level of control. But just just kind of as a brief overview of the permissioning here, in an explanation on what we're going to see. Because I am project admin in this system, I'm going to see all of the folders that I have access to or that we've built into this project. If you were inviting an outside consultant, let's say the MEP consultant to the project, we could limit the permissions to which folders they would see. And they would only see, for example, they would see shared packages and an MEP folder under design models. We could add them to a coordination model folder, but all of that, we have control over which folders they have access to, which is pretty important for what I'm going to show in explaining this publish and consume workflow process. So, that's enough about the permissions and folder setup. If you need additional help on that, reach out to us. We can help set your systems up and make sure you understand the whole back end, the behind the scenes stuff in Autodesk Docs. But jumping right into the good stuff here. So in this project, as a project admin, I have access to design collaboration. This is a module within the system that I turned on when I initially created the project. Again, just like with folder permissions, you can assign different members to have access to design collaboration, model coordination, and docs. If build is part of it, you can activate build and all different types of modules in the unified Autodesk Construction Cloud platform. So jumping into design collaboration here. I'll get into Revit and kind of walk through the setup, but in design collaboration, basically this is BIM Collaborate Pro. When we first set up projects, we can create different collaboration teams. So in this particular project, I just set up a few different ones. We've got our architect, our structural engineer, MEP, and then I created a separate team for coordination models. You may have heard this in the past when talking with us or other consultants about BIM Collaborate Pro, but when we're looking in this module at the top, this basically, we call this a swim lane, and it shows us a timeline for the project. And there are different little nodes that pop up on these swim lanes for these individual disciplines based on this whole idea of publishing our models up to the cloud. So just an overview, I'm going to get into a bit more detail about all of that. But simply in the design collaboration space, we have the different teams and the swim lanes that we're assigned to. Now, getting into the Revit model. All right, so I should have, all right, there we go. So just from, to set this up, to make it really basic and understandable, I created a very simple building. Started with architecture. I do have some structural grid lines placed in my architectural model, but they are grid lines that were placed by the architect initially. And in order to set this file up, first what I did, in order to connect it to BIM Collaborate Pro or to the cloud, there's a button under the Collaborate tab that is gone now, but it says Collaborate in the cloud. You click that, you pick the project that you're assigning this to. So the project has to be created first in the unified platform, and docs has to be, you know, the folder structure, everything is set up. But once that's set up, we click Collaborate in the cloud. We pick the project that we want to place this model, and then the folder in which we want to place it. So in this particular example, this ACC Arc Revit model, I just directed it to a folder under Design Models, Arc. I basically, through Revit, navigated to this folder, and this is where essentially, you know, if we want to refer to it in the old Revit terms, this is where the central file for the project is stored. This would be considered, for us from the architect, this would be the live model. You'll notice up here I have a consumed folder, which I'll talk about in a minute. But right now, for all of the people on your team that are working in collaboration, you know, doing your live work sharing, this is the file that they are going to access. This is the location of that file that they're going to access and work, you know, day in and day out, making updates to it, doing your normal synchronized to central. When you do that, it's updating that live model within that folder. On the other side of this, and because my computer crashed, I did have this open, but I'll open up the structural portion of this model. So all I've really done in the structural model, I copied the structural grid over and monitoring the grid. You know, usually we would do that the other way around. Once the grid's been copied in, the architect's going to monitor it, but let's see, let's cancel that. So let's get back to our 3D view. So in this project, so same process, created a structural file, did collaboration in the cloud, picked instead of the architectural folder because of my folder structure in docs. We've got a structural folder, and the live model for the structural engineers is placed in the root of this folder. So from a permissioning standpoint, you know, we would give our structural engineers access to this folder so that they can work on a live model internally at their company, but they would not have access to the architectural portion or the MEP portion. And as you can see, they also have a consumed folder set up. Back in Revit, when I initially linked in the architectural model, now this is a little bit of there's a little bit of setup that goes into doing this correctly. Before we can link the architectural model into the structural consultant, so from the architect's perspective, we need to create a package from architecture and publish a package out for the structural engineer's consumption before we use this type of publish consume process. So let me step back one second here. If you're a firm that has architects, structural engineers, MEP engineers all under one roof, you can use a live link process. So you don't really have to worry about this whole idea of publishing your model and then consuming a package or consuming the model. You can work off of the live model. The problem with that, even if you are working under one roof, is if someone on the architectural model starts to make changes, maybe just quick little iterations of their design, they step out for lunch and the structural engineer reloads the link. They see these updates, these iterative updates to the model, so they start designing around them. Well, architect comes back from lunch, they decide that they're not going with any of those new iterations or reverting back to what they had. Well, now you've just increased time and production for the structural engineer then to go back and, rewind to get back to the original model. So even under one roof, it makes sense to me and others, I guess, that have worked through this process, that the idea behind a publish and consume process for BIM Collaborate Pro is that we're setting actual release dates, or we're setting up specific times where we actually want to see the updates that the other disciplines are making. So instead of linking, if you were all under one roof, instead of linking directly to the structural model here, what we do then is each of us, each different discipline, has this consumed folder that can be set up. Now, again, when we activate the collaboration feature, Collaborate Pro, and set up our teams, we have to designate which folders our consumed folders are going into. But essentially, if I go back to Collaborate here, Design Collaboration, using this idea of consuming a model, we can designate from our different teams when we're actually going to publish these little packages up to this timeline. So if we're making changes to our architectural model, we can still work in it like normal. We can change wall types, we can make design changes, but if we know that the structural engineer is going to be affected by a whole bunch of stuff that we work on within, a 2-day cycle or a 3-day cycle, we probably don't want them to be seeing those updates as we're making changes. We want to say, here's all of the changes that we've made. We're ready to release this package for your consumption so that you can see all of the changes. So in order to do that, from Revit, if we do start to make different changes to our model, synchronize those changes back up to that live folder location. And once we've synchronized our changes, we can go back. If there are any model updates, on this homepage in Revit, you'll see that I've made changes to the model. I can update, or there's an update available. What this indicates is that, yes, you may have worked 3 days making changes to your model, but you haven't released a publish or updated a publish to Collaborate Pro, which all that really means is there's certain things that are included in your publish package. I'll show you those, but mostly sheets and different views. When we're ready to update for the other disciplines to see our changes, first step is we have to publish those changes up to the cloud. So this is kind of like an added level of synchronizing your project for all to see. So once we publish this, it'll run through it. I'm not going to click publish. Sometimes it takes a couple of minutes to update the sheets and things that are located in that publish package. But I did this earlier, so it should kind of be pre-set up. Once we create a publish set, click on the, it will show up on the swim lane in Collaborate as a box. We haven't really done anything to this yet. Let's go to webinar stuff out of the way. Yeah, everything, sorry, I didn't want to click on that because now it's trying to load this up and it's going to be tough on my graphics card. We expand this out. Come on, catch up. So as this is going, just kind of review, our team is working in our Revit model as they normally would, even in traditional central file, local area network sharing. We're saving our changes, we're synchronizing our changes to the central, we're getting model updates from the team. When we're ready to actually communicate those changes to our other consultants, the first step there is to publish that up to the cloud. So when we do go to publish, come on, let's go back. All right, cool. It allowed me to click out of there. Once we go to publish, it will put a little node on this timeline The reason that this is showing this little message too, this has kind of a scale to it. I'd have to zoom into this timeline, but we would actually see 2 nodes there. There was one point that the model was, our package was released, and then I must have published it later on at a different time. So we have these circles and these squares that show up. If we're ready to create a package, so publish is the first step. Now we're ready to release a package that the other disciplines can consume. What we have to do from there is initially published, and then at the end of our swim lane, so the architect is the main controller right now, we can create this new package. This is going to open up another 3D view by default, hopefully not crash out on me. All right, good, it went to a sheet. From this page, we can name what this package set's going to be. So the initial one I created was a 10% DD. Let's just say we worked a little bit further. We've got a 20% DD set. And then inside of here, and I didn't go over this yet, but we can choose which sheets we're publishing and which different views we're publishing. So it's a pretty typical thing that we'll have some sheets published, some 3D views published for viewing. I definitely don't want to click on this one right now, but you can review them before you release that package. This is going to include any and all of the models that you want to include in that package. So in the case for the architect, you might have additional Revit links from the design perspective. So large building, you might have it broken down into different areas or floors and have different Revit models linked in to create your architectural model. You would want to make sure that if you were using a multi-model process, that all of the models that the other disciplines have to consume are included in this package. In this case, I would just have the architectural model because this is so simple. And then any other supporting documents. If there was a contract, initially in the project, like a BIM execution plan, you could upload that to your docs folders and then include that into your package release. So I've already created a 10% DD. One thing I left open here was from the other end, the structural engineer created their initial model based on the architect, and I haven't consumed it from the architectural side yet. So instead of saving this and creating a new package, what I'll do here to show you how this whole process works is once a package has been created, you have the ability, there's a button where you can click on the little circle and share it out to the other consultants or the other teams on the project. So let's see if I zoom in here just to show you what that looks like. Now my button's gone. I don't know why that's, oh, it probably combined this one. But I would have a green colored in circle from architecture that I've created a new DD set. Actually delete that one out. And when we clicked on that, there it is. So once we click on this, instead of reuse, because I've already published this package, it would just say share, and then I would be sharing that package, so that state of the model, with all of the other disciplines involved in the project. I've already preset this up from the structural side of things, so structural I can switch because I'm an admin, but from Revit, I published the structural model. I have not consumed it yet from the architect, or the architect hasn't consumed that model yet, but it's ready for consumption. So structural engineer created their 10% DD package. They published that up to BIM Collaborate Pro. And now, because I'm the architect, I can click on this node and I can choose to consume their updated model. When you do this, this actually pushes the updates from that model that they've published into the consumed folder from our architect. So remember, we're the architect, we have access to our folder, but because I've consumed the structural model, this is the first time I've consumed the structural model, but it does show the structural model now in this folder structure. So it's all automatic. And then the other thing I haven't set up yet, and I wanted to make sure that everyone was clear on this, is in a live link scenario, go back to, so I am in my, okay. I'm in the ARC model right now. From a live link perspective, so I don't have any, I haven't even linked the structural model in yet because there was no model that was, there was no package published for me to link into the architectural project yet, but now there is. So in a live link scenario, we would just use our normal insert model, link Revit, and then we would browse to, on Autodesk Docs, we would browse to that live folder and we can link it in. So if you do have permissions to the different disciplines folders, you can link the live model in. With this consume process though, what we want to make sure that we do is we link the correct model, the consumed model, into our current Revit project. So project files, design models, I'm going to go into my ARC folder. So again, because I have admin privileges, it makes it more confusing. But if you only had access to the architectural folder, those other folders wouldn't show. But I go into my consumed, structural, and this is the appropriate structural link that has been consumed. This is all up to date based on what the structural engineer tells us is up to date. And when I open that up, we should see some structural beams in here. If I look in the 3D view, we can see the structural file has been linked in. So ultimately, this process, because of that individual, that consumed folder, and the way that these functions are built into BIM Collaborate Pro, we have the ability to, one, when we publish a package or publish the model up, we have the ability to create a package from it. And then once that package is created, then we have the ability to share it out to the other consultants. Once it's shared out, then they have the ability to determine when they want to actually consume that and update their links within their files. So it's a very, it's a preferred process because we're not seeing active changes occurring within the model, different design iterations that might not be finalized before those packages are released. So this is something that you could definitely timeline out. Every Friday, we want to consume the structural package, or however frequent that needs to be. But you are in control over when you're seeing these updates to the model, and the consultants are in control of when they're updating it. So it still gives everyone the ability to have control over their own parts of the model, and it avoids being or having issues that might not be real issues come up because it is just a little bit more control over how everything is set up. One thing I do like to point out, also I should have pointed this out earlier, from the Collaborate tab, I do have published settings. So this project is really simple. I created some different sheets in here. I created a special published set called my Publish Sheets ARC, and I included some architectural sheets in here. What's also important about publishing our models is that we're not going to see updates to these views in Autodesk Docs until they're published. So you can do your synchronize with Central, you're updating your models. You're not going to actually be able to go into it's always defaults to a 3D. Let me switch over really quick to a 2D view here. If you look up here in the top left corner, I've got version 3 of this model. That versioning is based on the published model, not the amount of times that users have synchronized their model with the Central. So even internally, in a control perspective, your team has to determine when they're going to publish to update sheets that are located in Autodesk Docs. So based on that published set that I had, If we look at our 2D documents, only those sheets that were included in that publish set are showing. And 3D view, I've got the saved 3D view that I can navigate to. So if you have certain elements turned off, you can save 3D views at their current state. Even things like, yeah, so even things like if we wanted to turn off the other disciplines links within this 3D view, I'll get into that with the coordination models. But this is just a nice kind of a way to publish the updates to our respective models and updates to the sheets. We can click through these different sheets. But again, if a change happens in the model, the only way that we're going to see that reflected in one of these 2D sheets on the cloud is if you actually publish those updates to the cloud. So if we moved something, if we move the stair over to the left, and it's been 5 days since we published, we're not going to see that move of the stairs until this model is published. So it's kind of the internal control over what you're seeing. So from a project management standpoint, project managers might not have the need to get into the Revit files, and they're just viewing everything through this document management system. They can come into these views and they can start to do things like markups and issues, which while I'm in this right now, I might as well just show you that. So second thing on the agenda that I was going to go over is that in Autodesk Docs, we do have an issue tracking system, and that can be done through any of these 3D views, 2D views. There's a little bar over here to the right when we're viewing these sheets within the cloud, where we can either, one, just create an issue by clicking this checkbox. We can assign what type of issue it is. So if it's a design issue, I pick issue, I pick, that's issue there. Just click to create an issue. And then we can assign some data to that issue. So what is the status of it? What type is it based on what I initially picked? We can put in a description. And probably more importantly, we can assign it to someone in the project. So if we want someone to be responsible for that, we can assign that person in the project that issue. We can put in things like location, details, when it's due to be solved, and any references. References are kind of neat. We can attach things like different files. I'm seeing all of these other areas here that are grayed out because I do have Autodesk Build. But unless you're part of Autodesk Build, you're not going to get access to things like attaching an asset reference to this. So I think primarily with just normal docs functionality, we can attach other files. So if there was a PDF or a detail sheet or something that we wanted to show there. But once the issue is created, you'll see it numbers my issue. It does publish the issue automatically. So when you create an issue, it publishes it. If we wanted to mark up anything within a sheet, we can put that annotation. This is all stored within the sheets. And once it's marked up, we have the ability here where we can publish the markup. You can control, it's kind of funny, you have to create it first and then you can control things like the color or the thickness of that markup. I don't know why the control isn't there where you can, I guess you can control color, but you can't control the thickness and opacity until you actually make the markup. But once it's there, you have the control over that. And let's see, issues there, markups there. I did create earlier on, I created another issue and markup on this sheet. So this is a system where someone that is reviewing the design, they can go and they can create these markups. They can issue them out, and then through the issue system within Docs, close out of here, we're able to see any of these open issues. So kind of an archive of the issues that are open, who they're assigned to, and where they're placed. One thing, and I believe that this is something that they're looking to fix, if you were to open up a project and just go to this issues page to see, maybe you got an email notification that an issue was assigned to you. So you open up your issues list and you see what issues are assigned to you. It tells you which model those are located in. So this was published, to the ARC model, and the issue was placed there. You can click on this and it will open up the ARC model. Something BIM 360 used to do is as soon as you clicked on the issue, it would take you into the model. It would bring you right to the specific sheet that issue was created on. Through the unified platform, I found when you click on that button, it just opens up the model and you actually have to navigate to the sheet that it was placed on. So if I just clicked on the check mark right now for issues, it's telling me that no issues are found, which is incorrect because obviously I just created a new one. But in sheets and views, if I navigate back to my 102 page, it'll load up this sheet and the markup. There it is. And we can see the issue there. Because did I click on issue 2 or 1? I can't remember which one I clicked on. If I go to level 1 here, it'll almost, let's see, and then, yeah, it's so funny. I click on this one that I just created, and that was the issue I clicked on back in the issues page in Docs. Once I open the sheet up, it automatically opens up the issue in the sheet, but it's like I had to walk through to get to that. So something to be aware of if you're used to the way that BIM 360 works. One workaround, and I know it's an added step, but when you actually create your issue, you could always put in the description what view or what sheet that issue is being applied to. So let's see, at 140. All right, so time is going by a little bit quicker for me, but let me make sure. So we can track issues that way. We can, let me go back to this. If I was Sam Smith, I can go into this open issue, resolve it, make changes, publish the updates to our model, and then close the issue, and that will be reported to this issues list. So I won't go through step by step for that because it'll take a few minutes, and I really wanted to go into the model coordination really quickly. So, and have time for answers here at the end. So let me navigate back to a different project that we have. So this project being extremely simple, I don't have a whole bunch of ductwork. Actually, I don't have any MEP modeled up in this one. It's all just structure and architecture. So I'm going to open up a different file that we have in Revit 2021. So let me close this out. Two models will close. All right, so let me navigate to this. It's called the Big Box Food Mart. If you've ever seen any presentations from Scott Burke, he uses this one as well. But another area that we have is for model coordination. So this is another module still under BIM Collaborate. It is included in BIM Collaborate, not BIM Collaborate Pro. But this area here is a system that we can use similar to like Navisworks, where we can run clash detections between models. But a lot of the granular control over what we're actually trying to see with our clashes really comes from how these models are populated within the system. So we've got this project, this Big Box Food Mart in Revit. And let me see, we call this one the master coordination model. So I'm just going to let this open in the background. So in model coordination, we've gone through the process. We actually have a different folder for model coordination in a different model coordination team that is created. Basically, there's an empty Revit project file where we're linking in all of the disciplines into this one Revit project, this master model coordination or master coordination model project. And the purpose of doing that is that it gives us the option of still using these consumed models and updating the model, but we can create specific types of 3D views that isolate down to our different disciplines that someone that's in charge of the coordination for the project can really control. So you'll see here, I've got all of these different models. And really what these are, they're not different RVTs. They're all based off of the same master coordination model, RVT. But you'll notice that they've got these different names at the end: architectural, complete project, diffusers. Again, these are not separate Revit models that we're uploading here to create these coordination models. They're simply different 3D views that we've set up within this master coordination model and then made part of our published set. So keep doing zoom extents, but if we take a look at the structural framing, as you can see, we're really only seeing, I guess there's some foundation here, some slab, but we're seeing primarily our structural framing. This is part of the, if I click on it, this is part of the structural model. But if I jump into the architectural 3D view, we're seeing our ceilings, our walls. If I click on this now to click on or to select the model, we're seeing that this is the arc food mark. So there is an opportunity for you to create different view templates that are assigned to these different 3D views. I've got the 3 different links linked into this. So really this file is just a blank file. It's a landing pad for all of my links. And then within each of these views, in the visibility graphics of these views, we can control which links are turned on. And as you know, if you know Revit really well, you can get into more control over the actual components. So something like diffusers, obviously with this type of view, this is coming from the MEP file, but just using view properties, a view template potentially, we probably just, because there isn't diffusers from the architectural model, we controlled the visibility of what we were seeing. So turned off categories in this one like ductwork. But if there is any crossover between the architect's model, maybe you have plumbing fixtures placed in the architectural model, you can absolutely use the same view control to get into the view display settings for these individual models and create different visibility within these 3D views. And once these 3D views are created, in our publish settings, we just simply set up a publish package for coordination views and include all of those different coordination views that have been set up. So again, no real design work is happening in this coordination model, but if you take a little bit of time with the application of view properties or even view templates, you can create a nice coordination template where you have these different types of views created that isolate different parts of the project. So then getting back into model coordination. So all of these are just views that we've published up. We've assigned them as coordination models in this space. So each one of these is just part of that published set that we're putting in here. And then we can designate and we can start to run clash detection between them. So I do have some preset views, standard clash, duct versus structure, civil and structure already set up here that I could click on. And essentially what those are doing is they're comparing one model view versus the other, and they're finding clash detection between those views. If I go back into this model view, I want to create a new view. Maybe we want to check our structure against ducts and diffusers. Or maybe, I'll leave off the diffusers for now. We'll just do duct. From there, we just choose view. It opens up a new view at this coordination space for us to check those clashes. And once that's done, these are the two views that we're checking against. If we start to zoom in here and we realize, hey, you know what, we wanted to see electrical conduit or cable tray. While you're in this view mode, or maybe I'm missing the mechanical equipment, and I want to make sure that I'm checking my mechanical equipment against these other views from those that have been published to model coordination. Well, we can always add and remove models when we're in this view. So it's kind of a nice starting point to view a couple of different models. But we could always turn certain models on or off here. If I want to now turn on the diffusers and the mechanical equipment. We select those two. Again, this is just taking a really long time because it's taxing my graphics card here. But once that's done, we see the diffusers are here. If I pan around, you can see over back here in the distance, there's some mechanical equipment. And we can start to check clashes. So by clicking on this button here, we can set a primary model and we can start to review the clashes that are happening between the primary and the three links. You can always adjust and switch. So if we want to check structure is probably a good one to make our primary, because that's probably not moving, but we can isolate, okay, let's just see all of our duct. So when we do that, should update and then have a list here for us to review certain clashes. So there's a good one. We've got some ductwork clashing with the column. So finally, just kind of tying this back to the issuing system, through model coordination, if you've taken the time to set up these different views and publish them into model coordination correctly, you have this nice control over different systems to turn them on and off to run this clash detection. If I zoom in, so that's one important thing to know. If we want to create an issue, a clash issue that someone else has to review in the project, before I go to create the issue, come on here, just catch up. So if I want to make sure that someone is addressing this, we can check that item or those items that are clashing. You know, my primary model is listed first, and then if I expanded this morning, it would tell me that it's clashing with that section of duct. If I zoom in close to that first and then choose create issue, then you can put your little thumbtack or your waypoint where that clashes. And then just like before, I can fill out that issue, populate the issue with information about the clash. This is all really running very slow on me. But that also gets grouped into the issues in docs for the project. There's a few other things that happen with these clashes once they're issued out. It does grab this screenshot, and that's why I was trying to zoom in close to get a nice screenshot of that. Maybe this one's more telling because I can see other portions of the model, but that saves to the issue, so it stores that image. And once that has been created, let's make sure it automatically publishes the issue so it shows up in my issue list. And now if I get out of the coordination view, we can start to review overall the different clashes throughout the models. And if I jump back to docs, I could look at that. It's labeled as a clash. We'd have the reference image. So one other really cool thing about this matrix, when you do have all of these different views created that you're publishing from your coordination model, we can see that, hey, there are actually a lot of issues between, let's see, these two views. So it's kind of a heat map, you know, to show you where there might be a lot of conflicts that we want to review. So we've got our structural model versus our, let's see what this one is here, versus our duct. We have 240 individual clashes. So it's probably good to, if we click on that, it's going to take us into a view that compares those two models, and we can start to run through the list of clashes. If it's not an issue, then you can ignore it, but this is just a different way of doing model coordination in the cloud. We're down to about 7 minutes, so I don't think there was really much else. I kind of breezed through some of the process of creating the views, but hopefully that gave you enough to be able to reach out to us and ask questions if you need, or if you're interested in learning more about it. So I'll stop my presentation now, get back into the slideshow. All right,